guys, welcome to Vlogmas day 15. I had a kind of late start today because it was hailing outside, but I have an internship end of the year / 25th anniversary event, so I had to get ready. I have minimal eye makeup on and I did touch up my hair a little bit, but it's raining, so I'm wearing a raincoat. And that's pretty much it, but I'll show you what goes on and then I'll show you my outfit when I get there, but I hope the roads aren't too bad. All right, we're so busy setting up, but this is the outfit. I'm just wearing Vans because I can't wear like any flats or heels yet, but I have my pearl choker on and this dress is from Amazon and it's so comfortable. Get all this good Korean food. I'm feasting tonight. Alrighty, so I am finally back home from the event. It was definitely a long one, so I left a little early because I was feeling a little tired and it was super loud in there. My headaches were kind of getting bad. So the content from today, I don't have much throughout the day because I was a program manager, so I was focusing on running the event. So other than the small clips that I have before this, I don't have much. But to make up for it, in honor of me almost hitting 100k views on my GBS video, I thought I would compile some questions that everybody had from the comments and or questions that were privately messaged to me, just to clarify anything and just to raise more awareness about Guillain-Barré syndrome. To start, the reason why I filmed and put my Guillain-Barré syndrome video out there is because when I was first diagnosed, my mom tried to look for videos to understand what the syndrome was like. And especially because I couldn't communicate to her, she had no idea what I was going through. She had no idea how much pain I was in, where I was in pain, and what to expect. And seeing the comments, I saw that a lot of you had actually experienced Guillain-Barré syndrome. Maybe it was back when it was even lesser known, but I just thought that this was a good video to share with everyone, and YouTube is such a public platform where I can speak to a larger audience. And so even if you think this disease doesn't pertain to you, even if you think that you will never get it, you never know who might. I personally know that my friends, very close friends who have gone back to college, saw me go through this whole process. They saw my symptoms, and because they recognized it, they were able to help their other college classmates. I had 2 instances of this where immediately after their classmates started feeling similar symptoms as mine, they encouraged them to go to the hospital and advocate for themselves to get the lumbar puncture done. It is not a fun process. It is definitely painful, but it saves you a lot more pain in the future. And so these 2 individuals, who I don't know directly, but through a friend, they were able to diagnose it very quickly, and they were discharged from the hospital within a month without losing full mobility and getting fully paralyzed. So all that is to say that I love to post more content about Guillain-Barré syndrome, and if any of you have any other questions aside from the ones that I'm going to be answering in this video, please feel free to leave them in the comments or to message me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever you prefer. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so because I mentioned that GBS was related to COVID-19, the most asked question in my last video of GBS was I vaccinated, and if so, when? So I was at the time volunteering at a hospital, and so I was required to get the vaccine as soon as it came out. And now I believe in vaccinations, but I was a little scared because this COVID-19 vaccine had come out so soon and not many people knew about it, but because I had a relatively strong belief that it was needed, I got it done, and I needed it for my job and school as well. So I got vaccinated. I had the Pfizer vaccine. I had both the first and second shot as well as the booster. So I have had 3 shots in total, and the booster I got vaccinated on October 2021. And at that time, I also got vaccinated with the flu vaccine. The reason why the flu vaccine matters is because both the flu vaccine and the COVID-19 vaccine are possible causes to Guillain-Barré syndrome. But at the time that I was suspected to have GBS, I was tested positive for COVID, which is why they believed COVID-19 was the direct cause. And so because I had gotten both, they weren't able to directly place a fault on which one was which. And now I think about this a lot more often now because I thought that because I had gotten it in October of last year, it was so long ago that it had no impact on my body now. But truth be told, the vaccinations can last a very long time in your body and they can cause other effects. Now, I'm not saying don't get vaccinated. I'm not saying that at all. I believe that vaccinations are an important development for our health and for others' health. So if you are known to not have any bad reactions to it, I definitely encourage you to go get vaccinated. In my case and in many other cases though, that was not the case. Now, moving on to the second question. The second most asked was, how long were you hospitalized for? And now I did briefly mention in the first video saying that I was hospitalized for 4 months. Specifically, it was 106 days, excluding all of the extra days that I was kind of like in the hospital before being diagnosed and being in the ER and etc. Total, it's about 4 months, but specifically it is 106 days. I first noticed symptoms on May 6th after working a full shift on Cinco de Mayo, and I was officially hospitalized on May 9th, I believe. And my hospitalization consisted in 3 different places, I guess. Well, 4. First was the ER at the Johns Hopkins Downtown Hospital in Baltimore. Second was the Neurological Critical Care Unit, the NCCU, not the NICU. I know a lot of you are confused about that. And I was there for the longest period of time because I'm such a critical state and I could not function without that constant critical care. Third, I was moved to a regular hospital room before officially being discharged to the Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center. To go more into detail, at the Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center, I was first discharged into medical rehab, which means that I was still on a ventilator. I was unable to function without the help of a ventilator, and so I couldn't do like a lot of the PT that you currently see me doing. After a long time of that, they discharged me to regular rehab where I could do more intensive physical and occupational therapy. And now that leads me to my third question. What is an OT? I actually had this question before I got sick as well. So an OT stands for occupational therapist. And a lot of people get confused between occupational therapist and physical therapist because essentially they're both providing rehabilitation services. Now, how I understand it best after going through the entire thing is that physical therapists, while they work very close to occupational therapists, they're more responsible for big, large-scale mobility movements. And so like walking, running, gaining upper body strength back. It's a lot of the bigger muscles and just trying to move in general. On the other hand, occupational therapy or OT is functional things. So example, like your day-to-day tasks, writing, cooking, doing the laundry, folding laundry, the dishes. So these are things that you need in your day-to-day life to have a high quality of life. So they do work hand in hand, but they focus on different things. And so I remember when I was in OT, I would do a lot of things like cursive practice and painting, and it's a lot like preschool. So you're learning a lot of the same things. And I found these things from back when I was in occupational therapy. This is called Theraputty, and essentially it's the same thing as regular putty, the ones that you played with as kids, but they all have different like strengths or like difficulty level. So this one's kind of strong, but I would practice like pinching into the putty like this to gain my finger strength back. I would practice making balls and then rolling it out into like a little worm, pinching that again, or just like mixing different colored putties to kind of get that hand motion back into work. And so I still have the purple one and the green one, but yeah, they're a good keepsake because it keeps me in check and reminds me of how much I have gone through to get here. Because right now I can open to-go boxes and open water bottles no problem, but back then I couldn't even pick up like my phone. It was very hard for me, but these things definitely helped me a lot. They weren't fun, but they helped me. Now, moving on to the next question, it was about why was I diagnosed so late? What took the doctors so long? Now, like I said in the first video, I do not place any blame. I'm very thankful for the care team that I had. I am very thankful that they took my pain seriously and tried to figure out what was wrong with me. The reason why I was diagnosed so late is that GBS is a very unknown rare disease. There was like smaller than 1% chance that I could get it. It's very uncommon in people my age. Probably more common than people think though, because in the comments there were a lot of people who got diagnosed with GBS at a young age. But still, it's very uncommon compared to other syndromes and diseases. So they didn't expect it. Another thing was that because I was positive for COVID, a lot of the doctors assumed that these symptoms were from the new strain of COVID. And because I had gotten infected so many times, that's what they assumed. And it wasn't until later that the severe symptoms started coming and I started feeling paralyzed that's when they started to do the lumbar puncture. But then again, the reason why I was so late was because the first lumbar puncture that was done bedside failed. So I had like 5 different hole marks on the back from when they tried that. But after they failed, they couldn't really do anything with me until they figured out what it was. They put me in a hospital room and they wanted to get another lumbar puncture done on me, but because I was COVID positive, I had to be the last patient on their list of people to use the operating room. And unfortunately, it was passed from day to day to day, and I couldn't get it done until a lot later in the week. So that is the reason why. Okay, that's a lot of talking, so I hope you guys don't mind, but it's just a very informational thing, and I wanted to share this experience with you guys. So moving on to the next one, could I communicate at all? This was very intriguing for me. A lot of people were like, it's the scariest thing to feel like you're trapped in your own body, and that's true, but they were like, could you tell them how much in pain you were? Like, how did you communicate to your mom? Well, I didn't. I couldn't really communicate with them at all. Later on, maybe like a month into my hospitalization, thankfully my like neck and shoulders were kind of coming back, and so I could nod, I could shake my head no. So what I could do is they would ask me yes or no questions and I would respond. But other than that, I could not communicate. I mean, I couldn't breathe without a ventilator, so my mouth was not moving. My eyes were closed, I couldn't see. I couldn't move anything else in my body, so I just had to take whatever they did to me. I couldn't do anything. I think that is what I wanted to get across. Like, I was literally in bed, unable to talk, unable to breathe on my own, unable to eat, unable to move anything. I think it was definitely a fear of mine, and it was definitely difficult in the beginning, and it did give me a lot of time to think. And so a lot of people also asked, what did you think about when you were fully paralyzed? Like, wasn't that boring? Wasn't that difficult, scary, terrifying, traumatizing? Yes, all of the above. But I think, thankfully, because I could hear, I thought a lot about all these people who were showing up to save me. So that could have been my doctors, nurses, therapists, my parents, my family, my friends. I could see them genuinely wanting me to get better. They came to visit me. They came to be there for me. And for them, it may have been just like a small trip to Baltimore to see me. But for me, that was like a reminder of why I was working so hard to live. I was at the point in my life before where I didn't feel like there was a point in living anymore. That was a very difficult part of my life, and I know it's very common in people our age recently, but I think it was a change in mindset where before I was so focused on why it wasn't worth it, why it wasn't worth trying so hard. But when I was in the hospital, everything was so simple. If I was alive and I was breathing on the ventilator and I was able to somewhat communicate with my parents through nodding my head, and if I made another 12-hour shift until the nurses changed shifts again, then that was okay. That was a good day for me. And so then I started to focus on all of the good things, like, oh, all these people care about you. My friends made a GoFundMe to cover my medical bills, and it absolutely exploded within a couple of hours. And I was reminded that people do care about my life, that it may not seem like it, but I did make some kind of positive impact in a lot of these people's lives. So that's what I was mainly thinking about. And also, I was thinking about all the things that I regret. So because before I went into surgery to get my breathing tube inserted because my lungs had collapsed, I kept asking the doctors, like, am I gonna live? Am I gonna make it? Am I gonna survive? Because at that point my tongue was slurred and I could kind of talk. So when they kept telling me that they weren't sure, that they didn't know, me going into surgery and falling under anesthesia, I thought that was gonna be my last moment alive. That could be my last moment alive, and I did face the brink of death. A lot of people assume that's very dramatic. It was not dramatic at all. It happened, and I'm still learning to accept it. But in that moment, all I could think about was all the things that I didn't say, all the things that I didn't do, just because I was so scared. And I was like, for what though? I was just so vulnerable with myself, and I think that's why my mindset has completely changed now. But Moving on. The next one, it's more positive. People asked, what was your favorite memory from the hospital? And I don't remember if I actually mentioned this in my other video. If I did, I'm sorry, but it was really my favorite memory. I vividly remember it was like a week before I was moved into the actual hospital room, like about 2 weeks before I was moved into rehab. So at this point, I could see, so my eyes are opening and closing. I couldn't keep them open for a long period of time, but I was significantly better than before. I was still on a ventilator, and it seemed like I was doing better physically, but I was in more pain because Guillain-Barré syndrome is one of the things where the better you get, the more pain you feel. Because you're less paralyzed, you're less numb to everything, and your nerves are coming back, so it feels like you are literally being electrocuted 24/7, even when you're sleeping, where you can't even go to sleep if you're not knocked out by a really heavy drug. So my favorite memory was on a Sunday, it was raining, and I was having another emotional breakdown. I always felt bad when I cried or complained in the hospital despite not being able to talk. Like when I looked sad, because I didn't want to place an extra burden on my nurses or doctors who are already working so hard overtime to keep me alive. My mom as well. I didn't want her to think that I wasn't thankful for everything that she was doing, and so I felt bad and guilty for feeling like that. But that day, there was this nurse named Olivia who I actually connected with recently, and my technician Katie, and they were both in the room with me. They noticed how upset I was, and during the time my mom stepped out of the room for a little bit to grab food, I was very thankful for them reminding her to get food because she was very bad about that because she didn't want to leave me in the room. So she had stepped out, and Olivia and Katie came into the room. They were holding me and they were just telling me it's okay to cry, like you are dealing with this so well, like it's okay to let it out. You deserve to feel the way you feel and you've been through a lot. So I was just sobbing and I was just crying in her arms, and they scrolled through TikTok with me and Instagram, social media. They updated me on all the entertainment drama and the juicy gossip because like I was basically dead for a while, so I didn't know what was going on. So I really appreciated that. And then all of a sudden, like all these random nurses like who weren't in the department walked into the room and they were like, oh my gosh, is this a party? And at that point I was already red and crying, and they noticed, and they're like, oh my gosh, we should all get together and we'll have fun. And so they all came in. It was like 10 nurses in a room. Some people liked dancing. There was a nurse who had auditioned for The Voice and actually made it to some of the rounds, so she was singing some country songs for me. They were just there for me, and it made me feel like I was normal, and that was crazy for me because I hadn't felt that way in so long. I still get emotional thinking about it because that's outside of their job description. They don't have to do that. They could be on their phone or eating a snack after taking care of me. They don't have to put the extra time to make sure I'm okay, but they treated me as one of their own, and that's why I refer to them as like my hospital family. Because for that time being, they're all I had. They were there 24/7, and they treated me like family. So yeah, that's my favorite memory. Sorry that I'm like getting emotional, but that was a great memory for me. Okay, I'm back. My nose is red. But moving on to the next question. So somebody asked, could you tell the difference between dreaming, thinking, and real life? And if so, how? I thought that was a really cool question. I had never thought about it, but thinking back, I think, so being on all the heavy drugs that I was and a max dosage, I hallucinated a lot, and that's kind of ironic because even when I couldn't see, I hallucinated. But basically, I felt phantom pain. It felt like all of my teeth were falling out. It felt like my hair was getting ripped out of my head. I felt spiders crawling all over me. It was crazy. I thought I could see a bat like hanging on the door. Like even I couldn't even see, but I thought that's what I saw. All that stuff. But aside from that, I knew when I was awake and thinking. But there were a couple times where I was confused when I was dreaming and awake, because usually I can tell when I'm dreaming, and I'm kind of like a lucid dreamer, so I make my own decisions and I'm able to wake up from a dream when I want to. In this case, in the hospital, I couldn't do that. I was kind of stuck in my dream, and if I was having a nightmare about like being in pain, I had to just live through it. And it was like that even in rehab when I was like seeing and everything. So that lasted for a while. And even when I got discharged, I had those nightmares a lot where I felt like I was back in the hospital having all that nerve pain and feeling electrocuted and like having seizures, and I couldn't wake up from it. I just had to deal with it until like I could wake up in the morning. So that was the hardest part for me, but I definitely could tell when I was awake because I was in pain so much, and when I was sleeping I was still in pain, but it was less. So yeah. And then the next question, how did you eat? So for the majority of my hospitalization, of course, I couldn't eat through my mouth. So I have 3 holes in my stomach from having feeding tubes stuck in there. And the reason why there's 3 is because the first one got infected and something didn't work with the cords. They had to take it out, they did another one, and then during the surgery something happened, they had to poke a 3rd hole, hence why I have 3 holes in my stomach. And I have gotten asked whether I want to get them removed, as well as this one right here, but I do not. A lot of people think that I'd be embarrassed about them. I am proud to have these scars. They are battle scars, okay? And I'm not trying to sound cringy, but they are what kept me alive, and these remind me every single day of what I went through and how much I deserve to love myself and treat myself the way I should be treated because of all of these things that I've gone through. And like, you don't have to go through all those things to love yourself. Obviously, you should love yourself. But for me, that's just a good reminder of how to value myself and how to carry myself around others. But all that's to say, I couldn't eat for the majority of the 4 months. I was just being fed like nutrition through the tubes. It was like a weird color too. It's kind of weird, but I didn't really feel hungry. I just craved things so much, and my mouth was so dry from all like the chemicals they shoved inside my body. So they would swab my mouth with water and then suck it right out with the suction, which sucked. But I still, like, that was like my highlight of my day. And then later when it got a little bit better, they started swabbing my mouth with cranberry juice and then sucked it all out again. But it was like nice and cold and sweet and tart, and I just love remembering that, which is why I'm obsessed with it now. I think something that not a lot of people know, but would like to know, is how I transitioned from being on a feeding tube to eating normal food. And if I was not in the hospital, I would have never known about this, but they actually have a swallow test. And so basically what that is normally, right? I actually want to show this to you guys. So these are my tubes when I was in the hospital. This is a part of the ventilator tube that I was on, and it's kind of dirty because it was on me for a long time. But basically, when you learn to first like breathe on your own without a ventilator, or like eat on your own without a ventilator, they put this like cap on your ventilator hole and take the tube out. And at that point, well, usually it's red, but this is like one of my old ones. They put it right here, they take out your ventilator tube, and at that point you're free from the tube. So you're able to move and stuff, but you're learning how to breathe on your own again. And so it's kind of hard in the first couple of weeks, and like they teach you how to slowly increase your time. But anyways, so you put this on, they put a tube up your nose and like into your neck part to see like how you swallow. So there's like a tube inside your nose. It's kind of weird. I was really scared to do it at first, but honestly it wasn't that bad. So you take a tube up your nose, and like it's kind of like hanging like down here, and it's like this big computer screen in front of you. You can see like yourself swallowing. And if you're not into all that gross stuff, you wouldn't have liked it, but I love all this medical stuff, so I thought it was like so cool. And so it's like hanging there, and like you see yourself swallowing, and they have like a bunch of like stages of food. So they have like milk, which is super thin liquid. They have orange juice. They have thickened juice, where it's like regular juice, but they put like a powder in it to make it more like thick, and it does not taste good. And then like the last stage is like graham crackers to see if you can like chew it properly and send it to the right tube, because technically when you swallow it can go down one of 2 pipes, and if you go down the wrong pipe, if it goes down the wrong pipe, that can cause major issues with your breathing, lungs, and all that stuff. And so they're just checking to see if you can actually swallow it properly. I had to do that twice. The first time I graduated from feeding tubes to being able to drink thickened liquids. And so at that point they were allowed to give me like thickened cranberry juice, thickened orange juice. I didn't like it much, but better than nothing. And then I took it the second time, and that time I was able to move up to soft foods. So when I moved to my rehab center, the first things they gave me were like yogurt, oatmeal, grits. What else? I think that was it. So I am very sick and tired. Oh, and soup. I'm very sick and tired of all those soft foods now. But anyways, besides the point. So I started with that, and they move you up to like small bites of stuff. So like small soft bites, like peaches, watermelon, things like that. And then they slowly like, you know, move you up the levels, and at the end you're able to eat normally. And throughout those levels, you're also taught how to like use a spoon again. So they give you like a weighted spoon so your hand doesn't shake, because at first, let's see, for example, if this was my spoon, I would hold it like this. I wasn't coordinated enough to hold it like this still, but I would hold it and I would like shake it like this. So every time I tried to feed myself, the food would fly out everywhere. It's like soup. It was not fun. So they give you a weighted spoon. And so I practiced with that. I practiced how to learn chopsticks because that's my preferred choice of eating, and all that. But I don't know. Eating was a big part of my recovery journey. It took so long. But yeah, moving on to the final question. What was one of the scariest moments in the hospital, or like the most painful? Now, it's hard to say like one specific instance because that whole experience was kind of horrible, to put it lightly. But I think one of the worst experiences actually was in the rehab center, because I was more awake and they cut me off of a lot of these hardcore drugs very quickly, which hurt me a lot. But during that time, I would get nauseous like really, really easily. And so just being up all night and throwing up every 2 hours. That was one of the most horrible moments from the hospital because they couldn't do anything to help me. They gave me anti-nausea medicine and it actually made me more nauseous and made me throw up even more. So I remember once for like 4 days straight, they had to stop my feeding tube and I couldn't eat anything, no soup, no grits, nothing through my mouth or the tube. And I just threw up every 2 hours, like even in the night, like including the night. So I had nothing in my system for 4 days and I felt so weak and in pain and cold. That's definitely one of the worst moments of my life. But yeah, now you guys know. But that's the end of my GBS rant. Like I said, if you have more questions, please leave them down below, or my DMs are always open for questions, encouragement, advice, anything you need. Don't forget to join the giveaway because I'm choosing 2 people to win $250 if you comment a nice thing you have done this holiday season and follow my Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube. So it's really, really easy. Go check out my Vlogmas video for that and make sure you join. And yeah, thank you for joining me for another Vlogmas. I'm going to be back for Vlogmas Day 16 tomorrow, so I hope you guys enjoyed and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.